everyone. Welcome to the Oviedo City Council meeting. It is Monday, October 6th, 6:30 p.m. We have all members present. If everybody could rise, and we are going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Rebecca, why don't you come on up and lead us in it, since you enjoy it so much, as you told me. No? Councilman.
All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chief, as he's making his way up.
Good evening.
Good evening, Chief.
I thought tonight we'd dedicate the invocation on behalf of fire awareness for October and, of course, breast cancer awareness as well. So if you'd like to join me in prayer, please do so at this time. Father God, we come to you with great many blessings and grace of what you bestow on this community day in and day out. And we recognize the protections that you afford us. And tonight we petition you to keep our community safe, to let our firefighters perform their duties quickly and efficiently, and that our residents and business owners and all of our occupancies would be safe in everything they do regarding fire safety. Lord, continue that endeavor for us. And we pray especially this month for all those who have loved ones or they themselves have embattled breast cancer or all forms of cancer, that you would give them healing and comfort and grace. We pray this in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Chief. Moving on to our first order of business ceremonial item. And as Chief did say, this is Fire Prevention Week. Chief, do you want to, I'm sorry, you went back already. Did you want to come up and speak to this at all?
No, so the proclamation covers it well, if you want to read that.
All righty. We are recognizing Fire Prevention Week, National Fire Prevention Week here in the city of Oviedo with a proclamation from the City Council. Proclamation reads, whereas National Fire Prevention Week was established in 1920 in recognition of the need for fire safety awareness as a result of the Great Chicago Fire of 1871, resulting in the destruction of 17,000 structures, 250 fatalities, and leaving over 100,000 people homeless. And whereas the City of Oviedo Fire Rescue Department aggressively strives to provide community fire and life safety education and stands in support of the annual National Fire Protection Association Fire Prevention Week, promoting this year's theme, Working Smoke Alarms Save Lives, Test Yours Every Month. And whereas the National Fire Protection Association reports the risk of dying in homes is cut in half when the home has working smoke alarms. And whereas lives and property may be saved by creating and practicing a home fire escape plan, maintaining smoke detectors on each floor of your home, maintaining fire extinguishers in the kitchen and the garage, inspecting the home once a year for fire hazards. Now, therefore, I, Dominic St. Pierre, Mayor of the City of Oviedo, Florida, hereby proclaim October 5th through the 11th, 2014, as National Fire Prevention Week in the City of Oviedo. And in witness hereunto, I set my hand and cause the seal of the City of Oviedo to be fixed this 6th day of October, 2014. Chief, would you like to come on up and get this, or we'll just get it over to you later on?
I'll pick it up later.
All righty. Great job, Chief. Could you guys pass this down? All righty, that is the end of our ceremonial items. We'll move on to council business. I need a motion to approve the minutes for the September 22nd, 2014 regular session, please. So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion? Hearing none, call the vote. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item number 3, that is the public comment portion of the meeting. Is there anybody in the audience who'd like to address council on an item that is not on our agenda or maybe on our agenda? Seeing none, we will close public comment, and we will move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda this evening are items 4 through 10. What is the pleasure of council?
Mayor,
Councilman.
motion to approve as presented.
Second.
Motion second. Councilman Henkin?
No, sir, looks good.
Deputy Mayor?
Good.
Councilwoman?
Looks good.
Councilman Britton? Good. Nope. All righty. Hearing no questions, I'll call the vote. All in favor of the motion to approve the consent agenda as presented, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to the public hearing portion of our meeting, that is compromise of items 11 through 15 this evening. The first item is ordinance number 1590. It is a comprehensive plan amendment. I will ask Mr. Groot if you would please read the ordinance by title only.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. An ordinance of the City of Oviedo, Florida, amending ordinance number 896 of the City of Oviedo, Florida, said ordinance being the comprehensive land planning ordinance within the City of Oviedo, Florida, as previously amended. Said amendment changing the future land use of approximately 24.81 acres located on the north side of Oviedo Mall Road and on the west side of Broadway Street from office and commercial to mixed use, providing for legislative findings and intent, severability, conflicts, and an effective date. And that's the ordinance by title, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Groot. Mr. Cobb, can you offer up some background on this?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is a request for City Council to amend the future land use map of the comprehensive plan to change the future land use designation of approximately 24.81 acres from office and commercial to mixed use. The subject properties lie on the north side of Oviedo Mall Boulevard and on the west side of Broadway Street. The impacts, the infrastructure impacts of the proposed comprehensive plan amendment was reviewed and found that there is adequate capacity to serve development within the planning horizon of the comprehensive plan. The proposed mixed-use land use designation is compatible with adjacent future land use designations and zoning districts and existing uses. The Development Review Committee and the Planning, Zoning, and Appeals Board reviewed this future land use map amendment and both recommended adoption. The City Council conducted a transmittal hearing on August the 4th and thereby at time transmitted the amendment to the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity. The Department of Economic Opportunity reviewed the amendment and did not identify any objections. Tonight, the City Council is asked to conduct a public hearing and adopt ordinance number 1590.
Thank you, Mr. Cobb. Does the applicant have anything to add?
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Rebecca Wilson on behalf of the owner. Address is 215 North Eola Drive in Orlando. We agree with the staff report we presented before you all a couple months ago before this was transmitted to the DEO. We were happy to see that they didn't have any concerns. We have with us the owner's representatives and our engineers. We're happy to answer any questions that you all may have. And if there is any public comment, I'd just like an opportunity to address their concerns.
Certainly. Thank you. As Mr. Cobb stated, this is a public hearing. I will open up that portion of the hearing. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to address council on ordinance number 1590? I do not have any written requests. Seeing none, we will close the public hearing portion and move on to the pleasure of council.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Henkin.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance number 1590.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Councilman Henkin, anything?
Just looking forward to it. Sooner the better. Thank you.
Councilwoman?
Good.
Councilman Britton?
Good.
Deputy Mayor?
Welcome to the area. Great.
All righty. Seeing no discussion, I will just add that you made a great presentation at the last hearing. No reason to rehash the whole thing. Glad to see that the DEO had no objections to the project. Do you have a groundbreaking date yet, or are we not that far along? Thank you. Did you get that, Barbara? Okay. All righty. Anything else from council? Hearing now, I'm going to call the vote. The motion on the table is to adopt ordinance number 1590. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All righty. Moving right along, we're up to item number 1591, and looky, it's all tied together here. Item 1591 is a zoning map amendment. Mr. Groot, would you please read ordinance number 1591 by title only?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. An ordinance of the City of Oviedo, Florida, amending Article 4, Section 4.1 of the city's Land Development Code, said section being the official zoning map of the City of Oviedo, Florida. Said amendment changing the zoning district of approximately 24.81 acres located on the north side of Oviedo Mall Road and on the west side of Broadway Street from office commercial and commercial to planned unit development, providing for legislative findings and intent, implementing action, non-codification, severability, conflicts, and an effective date. And that's the ordinance by title, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Groot. Mr. Cobb, do you have anything to add, please?
This is a request for council to amend the official zoning map to change the zoning of approximately 24.81 acres from office commercial OC and commercial C2 to planned unit development. The planned unit development zoning district is consistent with the mixed-use future land use designation that you just adopted. The Land Development Code requires the review and approval of a development agreement and a conceptual development plan as part of a PUD zoning map amendment. The Land Development Code actually requires that the development agreement be a part of the zoning ordinance. The proposed development within this PUD is for a multifamily parcel with approximately 300 dwelling units, an office parcel of 100,000 square feet of office units, and a hotel parcel with 108 rooms. This application was analyzed for the impacts to the city's infrastructure and was found that there is adequate capacity to serve the development within the planning horizon of the comprehensive plan. The Development Review Committee reviewed this application at its July 17th meeting, made recommendations to the applicant, and recommended approval with the addition of the recommended changes. The applicant concurred with those changes and incorporated them into the development agreement and the conceptual development plan. The Planning, Zoning, and Appeals Board reviewed this application in its July 29th, 2014 meeting, and they also recommended approval with the DRC's recommended changes. The City Council conducted first reading on August the 4th, 2014. It's recommended that the Council conduct a public hearing and adopt ordinance number 1591.
Thank you, Mr. Cobb. Does the applicant have anything to add?
Nothing to add. Mayor, just wanted to thank staff and Brian and Lonnie, too, on helping us with the development agreement. Enjoyed working with your staff. And again, if there are any concerns from the public, just like the opportunity to address them.
Of course. Thank you. As Mr. Cobb stated, this is a public hearing. We are at that portion of our hearing. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to address council on ordinance number 1591? I do not have any written request. Seeing none, we will close the public hearing portion and we will move on to the pleasure of council.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion to adopt ordinance number 1591.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Deputy Mayor, any questions?
Sir.
Councilwoman?
No.
Councilman Britton? Good. Councilman Henkin?
Looking forward to it. No questions.
All righty. Hearing none, I will just state once again that you did a great job presenting all the facts on this to us, and we are happy to see that DRC and PCA both concurred with the changes that were recommended and that you've concurred with them, and we do appreciate it. We look forward to having you here in the city. With that being said, the motion on the table is to adopt ordinance number 1591. All in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We didn't say you can leave. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
And Ms. Lee, your item's done as well. Okay, well then you're more than welcome to stay with us. All righty. Moving on, we're up to item number 13. It is ordinance number 1594. It is the Wellfield Protection, what is the name of this? Comprehensive Plan Amendment. Mr. Groot, can you read the ordinance by title only, please?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. An ordinance of the City of Oviedo, Florida, amending ordinance number 896 of the City of Oviedo, Florida, as amended from time to time. Said ordinance being the comprehensive land planning ordinance of the City of Oviedo, Florida. Said amendment amending policy 4-4.4.5 relating to wellfield protection as set forth in the potable water element, providing for legislative findings and intent, severability, conflicts, codification matters, and an effective date. And that's the ordinance by title, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Groot. Mr. Cobb, can you enlighten us?
Yes, Mayor. This is a request to adopt potable water element 4-4.4.5, and this provides for the protection of the city's well fields and potable water supply. This is a text amendment, so therefore it qualifies as a large-scale comprehensive plan amendment, which means tonight you're being asked, this is your transmittal hearing, and you're being asked to transmit this amendment to the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity and to determine whether or not they wish to review it. Once it comes back, then we'll have a second public hearing, which will be determined as the adoption hearing. The amendments that are being brought forth in this ordinance and also in the companion ordinance, which is next, which amends the Land Development Code, they do address changes to the city's wellfield protection policies and regulations. The amendments are basically to bring our comprehensive plan and Land Development Code more in line with what is prescribed in state statute, even though I will tell you that they do, even the changes still exceed the state statutes for the most part. Currently right now we have basically three types of protection zones around our wells. There is a 1,000-foot radius protection zone, and within that 1,000-foot radius, the following uses are prohibited. Landfills are prohibited, facilities for the bulk storage, including underground storage, handling, or processing of materials on the Florida Substance List, which is Chapter 442 of Florida statutes, activities that require the storage, use, handling, production, or transportation of restricted substances, agricultural chemicals, petroleum products, hazardous toxic waste, industrial chemicals, medical waste, feedlots and other concentrated animal facilities, wastewater treatment plants, percolation ponds, septic tanks and similar facilities, mines, excavations of waterways and drainage facilities which intersect the water table. Those things are prohibited within the 1,000-foot protection area. This ordinance would propose that we reduce that protection area to 500 feet. The second protection area is a zone of exclusion. It is a 200-foot radius around the well, and then and it is a limited use area. It basically says that you can't have septic tanks and other type of disposal systems within that area. And then the third level of protection, there is a 100-foot or 125-foot zone of exclusion, and this is what I call the no-touch zone. In other words, there can be no development whatsoever within this 125-foot radius. As I said before, the 1,000-foot protection area, this ordinance proposes to reduce it to 500 feet. Within the 200-foot radius, the ordinance proposes to reduce that to 100 feet. And then on the 125-foot radius, the no-touch zone, it proposes to reduce it to 75 feet. Our staff has worked with our environmental consultant, Yvonne Frozier, as well as with Mr. Groot in preparing this proposed ordinance. They also not only looked at just the amount of radius, but they also looked at what should be included as far as permissible and what should be prohibited, which the ordinance does outline for that. One of the things that is unique to this ordinance is that they added requirements that the development must be served by city sewer services. They also added a requirement that covenants be placed within any development order or development permit, affirming that the property's location is within a wellfield protection zone. The Development Review Committee reviewed this subject ordinance on September the 11th and recommended adoption. The Planning, Zoning, and Appeals Board considered the amendment on Tuesday, September 23rd, and also recommended adoption. Dr. Correa is here, as well as Ms. Frozier and Mr. Groot, and also Mr. Wyatt. In case council has any questions, any technical questions regarding this ordinance, I would defer to them, as they were the ones that had firsthand knowledge of preparing it. Tonight, as I said before, the council is asked to conduct a public hearing and then to transmit this ordinance to the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Cobb. This is a public hearing. I have one written request, and that is from Mr. Dave Axel.
My name is David Axel, 1757 West Broadway Street, Suite 1. I'm here tonight representing the interests of the Klontz family, who happen to own properties at the northwest corner of Klontz and Central and the southeast corner of Klontz and Lake Jessup. Two of your city wellheads are located on properties that were deeded back in the 60s by the Klontz family to the city. We worked closely with your staff reviewing the proposed ordinance and had some concerns about the prior ordinance. And I'm here to answer any questions and address any concerns you might have as they relate to how the property owner is affected. Other than that, I have to give credit to your staff. It's a complicated scenario trying to remedy your greater protections for drinking water with the current state and federal requirements. A little more complicated than I presumed when we started. So I have to give the staff credit. My client's attorney, appreciate their efforts and concur with their recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience who would like to address council on ordinance number 1594? Hearing none, we will close the public hearing portion and move on to the pleasure of council.
Move to approve?
I need a motion. How about this? I need to entertain a motion to transmit ordinance number 1594 to the Department of Economic Opportunity for review.
So moved.
Second.
We have motion second. Councilwoman, any questions?
Oh, I'm good.
Deputy Mayor?
No, thank you, Brian, for the other emails and follow-up information today also. Appreciate that.
Councilman Britton?
I'm good.
Councilman Henkin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I really struggled with this one, but when I really came down to it, it wasn't a struggle at all to not being able to support this. In my view, I mean, I've talked to our staff, talked to other people who are knowledgeable about this. I see no benefit to our citizens to allow development to come closer to our drinking water. And, you know, frankly, I'd rather move my well than have, you know, 100 less feet of protection area there. So, I mean, it is following the state statute. It seems to work everywhere else, but I've yet to find out why our predecessors put those extra protections in here. This kind of reminds me of the Econ protection plan where we doubled the 550 to 1,100. You know, I've been sitting here 9 years. This has never come to us, and, you know, I just can't in good conscience vote to allow. Not that I'm against development, which I'm not. You know, there's a lot of good development plans, but when you're getting that close to the city's drinking water wells, to me that gives me great concern and great pause. So, you know, I've seen plenty of towns across this country that I've traveled to, that I've lived in, that had, you know, contamination in their wells. And once that happens, yeah, you can try to clean it. They never really get right. So, to me, I'm not sure why this is even here, and I like the extra space to keep our wells, which are all in really good shape, clean, and I don't see any reason to approve this. I think it's bad for our citizens, to be honest with you.
Anything else?
No, sir.
Mr. Cobb? Sorry.
Yes, sir.
I'll let you finish. To address Councilman Henkin's concerns, what were the areas in the wells in Alafaya Woods? Do you know how many feet the old wells that were over there, how far the homes were built from them?
No, sir, I do not. I did do some research. Mr. Hinkin did ask me to do some research about how this came into being. And the original policy, I went digging. And I did find that the original policy was crafted in 1993, which that's all I could find on it. There was a note that said amended 1993. And
So then the Alafaya Woods wells, the ones that are, I know we don't use them anymore, but the ones that are over there would have been in place before then.
What I could, trying to piece pieces together, the original comprehensive plan was adopted in 1991. And basically what this policy said was that by 1992, the city will adopt standards for wellfield protection, and it said that they would be placed in the Land Development Code. That original 1991 comprehensive plan was not found compliant by the State Department of Community Affairs. They did spend 2 years, the next 2 years, trying to reach settlement with the Department of Community Affairs to get the comprehensive plan found in compliance. So the only thing that I could conclude from that, just knowing that history, the only thing I could conclude was that during that 2-year period, as part of the settlement with the Department of Community Affairs, the city agreed to structure this policy in that stance. As far as having the 3 levels of protection, with the 1,000 feet being the first one, then the 200 and the 125. Also, my speculation is, Mayor, that it was pretty much the Department of Community Affairs probably dictated it to the city.
What about our wells over on Chapman? Now, those aren't in the city. So
They're not in the city, no.
So
They
what
would
protection
follow the county.
ordinance are those under, seeing that that's where we get most of our water from?
They are governed. They're governed by the county's protection. The county's protection regulations. Mr. Hinkin did ask us to look into that as well. They pretty much follow Florida Administrative Code, and it's a variety of things. The largest protection area within the Florida Administrative Code, they have levels as well. Depending on the type of use. They call it a setback is what they call it, whereas we call it a zone of exclusion, they call it a setback. And they range from 50 feet, which I think is the no-touch zone, is 50 feet, up to 500 feet. And it's just how far certain things have to be set back away from a wellhead. And so those are, it has varying ranges. It has 50, I think it has 100, 200, and there may be one other one, 500. Is what they have. So they have different, depending on the use. The use actually drives the setback away from the wellhead.
Now, forgive me if I'm wrong, but those are located right next to the Huntington subdivision, and I believe Huntington subdivision's on septic, is it not?
Yes, they are.
Do you know how far away the wellheads are from? Are they far enough away? I'm
For the most
assuming
part.
we wouldn't have built them, the county wouldn't have approved them.
Linda, could you pull up the map that, I'm trying to remember what we titled it, the map that shows the Seminole County ranges? And Mr. Wyatt's here and Mr. Krasauskas are here. They can give you more of a technical answer than I can. On the map up there, you'll notice that the widest area is the 500-foot radius, the 500-foot setback. That's the dark green area that is on the exterior from each of the wellhead sites. You'll see that a number of the homes adjacent to the wellhead property are within that 500 feet. The next area, which is sort of a lighter green, is the 300-foot setback, and then looks like there are very few homes, maybe just a couple at the end of a cul-de-sac or something are in there. And then you have the 200-foot area. There's nothing within 200 feet of any of our wellheads regarding as far as where they are. That's one of the things that we did on that property. We strategically placed those wellheads to make sure we would maximize the protection for them.
Because to the, because to the left, those homes are on sewer. That's Chapman Lakes.
Is it? Okay.
Okay.
Now, let's see here.
I'm just trying to understand,
Sure.
what
mean,
we're
that's-
doing,
that's
why
the- that's the
we're
county.
changing it, what's planned on being built around the wells.
Well, I think the main thing, and Linda, if you could bring up the map that is the Ordinance 1594 attachment map, if you could bring that up. And the staff hasn't kicked me yet, so I'm assuming I'm doing okay. This is this graphic
Bobby
here.
looks like he's ready to jump out of his chair, but that's okay.
If we get too technical, I will have to defer. This map here is what was attached with your with your staff report. And this shows the 4 wells that this ordinance will impact. And the green area, the green shapes are the houses that are within the 500 feet. As you can see, within there are some existing homes within the 100-foot circle. Actually, Linda, if you could blow that up just a little bit more for us. I think it's okay if we don't see the whole map at one time. If we could just focus in on the circles, that would be great. If you could just pan over to the right. You can see there that of course, the inner circle there shows the 75-foot, and then the next circle shows the 100-foot, and then obviously the last circle shows the 500-foot. And the one thing that I learned about this is that these are very, very deep wells, and so these protection radiuses are adequate to protect these wells. If these were shallow wells, I don't think we would be here making the recommendation to alter our protection zones. The fact that they went in and addressed the different uses and went a little bit beyond what I believe the state statute does as far as what it prohibits and what it will allow. I think that from the standpoint of us, with the depth of our wells, that we're safe. And like I said, Dr. Correa's here and Ms. Frazier's here as well as Mr. Wyatt, as far as technical questions that you may have.
Well, let me ask a non-technical question. A lot of these are older neighborhoods, so I'm going to assume a lot of these are already on septic here, no? Bobby, do you know? Joseph, anybody who wants to answer that question? Yes. Come on up. Yes. Come on up. Tell me who's on septic here.
All along Clance is septic. All along Clance is septic.
What about the subdivision? I forgot the name of it.
Yes, septic.
Whispering Woods, septic? All right. Thank you. All righty, so we already have folks. So if it was changed in 92,
it was created in 92. It was created in 92.
Okay, so it was changed in 92 or 93, and these wells are already here.
Yes.
And the subdivision was already there, right? Because I think Whispering Woods was built in the 80s. Must have been. There was no sewer around. What did it accomplish? Why did we even do it in the first place? I mean, I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot. I'm just trying to. I'm trying to understand how we have all this development around these wells already, and we're encumbering 1, 2, maybe 3 parcels of land. The rest of the land is ours, or most of it's ours. I'm just trying to wrap my hands around this.
I can give you what I believe happened, and then Mr. Groot has something as well. What I believe happened is that the city was doing what it could to get its comprehensive plan in compliance. And if the State Department of Community Affairs said the state requires 500, we want you to go to 1,000, I think the city did it. Is what I really think. I think they did what they could to get in compliance with the Department of Community Affairs, and that's my speculation. Actually, this predates me, so Mr. Groot may be able to shed some light.
I was there.
Well, I think it predates everybody here except for maybe Lonnie and Chief White. So, Chief White, come tell us what you know about this. Oh, maybe Drew. Drew, you were probably here, right? Yeah, man. I'm sorry, Mr. Groot.
No, back at the first wave of comprehensive plans, you had a state agency, Florida Department of Community Affairs, that was very, very, very aggressive and objected to a lot of comprehensive plans, and basically local governments, and Oviedo wasn't the only one, just added goals, objective policies to get through the day and get the plan into compliance. And I think that's maybe what happened here. And part of the issue that arose to be the incipient force behind this change is that the 125-foot was a no development zone.
Yes.
Which meant that property owners who might have the zoning that allows certain uses couldn't use their property for anything. Well, the current status is they can't use their property for anything, not because of something they did, but because there's a well. And that's part of the reason for these proposed amendments, which balance the use of the property with the technical measures that protect the wellheads. And that's why Dr. Frosier's was retained to help us develop those standards. Joseph was involved in order to strike that balance between some use of the property and the necessary protections to protect the wellhead. And the uses that are allowed are not that much, quite frankly. Right away, open space, one residential dwelling unit per parcel. So it was trying to strike that balance. But to go back in history, it was probably because DCA said to do it.
All right. I don't have any other questions. Anybody else?
I got a few.
Sure,
When were
Brian.
the wells on Klons put in, Brian, do you know?
No, sir, I think they were part of the original, unless Mr. Wyatt has an idea.
Was that pre-93?
I think so.
Okay. And the reason I'm asking is, looking at Google Earth like I always do, I would be willing to bet a lot of that area around those wells was agriculture back in the day when those wells were put in, and I'm not sure that land use was really conducive for maintaining the purity of the water either.
I would suspect the wells were put in at the same time the plant was put in, which was the late 60s.
Late 60s, okay. So I'm guessing there were a lot of orange groves and whatnot in that area, and now there's houses and parks. So I don't know what impact this is. And I can see what Mr. Hankins' concerns are, but I don't see what impact it would have by adopting this.
And tonight's not an adoption hearing. All we're
Or
doing tonight is
whatever.
saying it's got to come back. Correct, Brian?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Mainly it affects the 125 and in. As Lonnie said, that's what I'm,
That's the biggest impact, yes. The
Instead of
reduction
going
of the
from
125 to
0
75.
to, no development whatsoever, no sanitary hazards at 100, and then open courts, septic, all those kind of things. It limits greatly, as far as I look at it, greatly limits what can go in from 75 and inward. That's how I kind of, generally. The other stuff, there's plenty of houses on septic well within the 500 already. And it's just stuff that was in the 500
Well within the
previously.
1,000.
What's that?
Well within the original
And well within the
1,000
original
feet.
1,000. Yeah, you look at the original 1,000, it's well within 1,000, but I'm saying even as 500, there's a good amount there. And the limitations that are putting on that aren't really, I'm going to say that significant. It's that 125 that changes. And as long as it's within the state, and others, it's a little more stringent than that. I think we're fine. Good enough to transmit, at least.
If I may, the two primary state numbers are 50 feet and 100 feet, right? Primary and moderate. So as you see, everything is, within the 100 feet, it's tight on the site.
Right.
I just have one question. Changing this, is it going to affect our water?
No.
We're going to still have the same good water that we get? Thank you.
How deep are the wells?
I believe they're in the range of 400 feet and a little bit deeper than that. Is that right, Joe?
So the city's using these 4 wells in the Chapman Field, basically, for
Two
all of our
redundant well
wells?
fields.
Okay. And everything that was down towards Stenchton Mall, that's abandoned at this time?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
Just one final
Sure.
comment. I appreciate you all weighing in on this. That's why I didn't make a motion to deny, but, I will just say this. A 400-foot well, when you lived up in New York, and the town I grew up in had wells that were 1,000 feet deep and are still polluted 30 years later from a certain company that made airplanes that diluted it. And yes, you're all
They
correct.
start in Top Gun? Oh, no.
You're all correct. There is some development in there, but why allow more? This is all about, taking care of a couple of properties, and 400 feet ain't that far. And, you know, you gave up 50 feet on, you know, the no-fly zone, if you will. So, you know, somebody building a house there, dump some oil or something. Cindy's question was a great one. Is it going to damage the water? We don't know that. It depends on what development comes in there. And all it takes is somebody to dump something in there. So for me, certainly couldn't hurt having more space between our wellheads. And what everybody else does is what everybody else does, because the next thing that's going to be happening here, someone's going to come up here and say, let's cut the 550 of the river. This is setting the precedent. So, but I appreciate you all weighing in and, you know, looking into it.
Thank you, Bobby. I think they built the lunar module, too, but anyway. All righty.
Say no.
Don't know who I'm talking
Y'all are
about.
good movies, dude.
All righty. The motion on the table is to adopt ordinance number 1594, which is transmitting the ordinance, to the DEO for review. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. Moving on to item number 14. I'm sorry, Keith?
I was just
Okay.
Steve.
Moving on to item number 14, it's ordinance number 1595. Mr. Groot, can you read the ordinance by title only, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. An ordinance of the City of Oviedo, Florida relating to wellfield protection, amending Article 15, Section 15.6, and Article 18 of the Land Development Code of the City of Oviedo, Florida, providing for associated definitions, providing for penalties and enforcement, providing for a savings provision, providing for conflicts, providing for codification and correction of scrivener's errors, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. That's the ordinance by title, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Groot. Mr. Cobb, please enlighten us.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the Land Development Code version of the ordinance that you just discussed. It basically implements the changes that were approved under Ordinance 1594 and takes them and incorporates them into the Land Development Code. It also adds definitions of certain terms to the Land Development Code as well. And so I'm not going to bore you with all the details. We did that with the comprehensive plan. The Development Review Committee did review this at its September 11th meeting and recommended adoption. The Planning, Zoning, and Appeals Board considered this amendment at the September 23rd meeting and recommended adoption. It's recommended tonight that you have a public hearing. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Yes, that you conduct a public hearing and then schedule a public hearing to coincide with the second public hearing for ordinance number 1594.
Thank you, Mr. Cobb. As Mr. Cobb did state, this is the public hearing this evening, and this is the public hearing portion that we are in. I have one written request, and that is from Mr. Axel. Would you like to address us?
David Axel, 1757 West Broadway Street, Suite 1. I'll repeat what I said about the prior item. We support the staff recommendation, and if there's any questions, I'm available to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience who would like to address council on this item? It was the only written request I had. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, and I'll look to council for a motion to schedule a public hearing after the Department of Economic Opportunity reviews ordinance number 1594.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Councilwoman?
I'm good.
Deputy Mayor?
Yes, sir. Fine.
Councilman Brayton?
Good.
Councilman Henkin? Good. All righty. All those in favor of the motion to transmit ordinance number 1595 up to the DEO for review, please signify by saying
No schedule.
transmit. Schedule a public hearing. Oh, I'm sorry. All those in favor of the motion to schedule a public hearing after the Department of Economic Opportunity reviews ordinance number 1595, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All righty. 4-1. All righty. So we are moving along. We're up to item number 15, ordinance number 1597. Mr. Groot, can you read ordinance number 1597 by title only, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. An ordinance of the City of Oviedo, Florida, closing, vacating, and abandoning a 12-foot utility easement located between Lee Avenue and Lake Charm Drive, south of Woodcrest Way, as depicted more specifically in an exhibit, providing for findings, a savings provision, conflict, severability, non-codification, and an effective date. And that's the ordinance by title, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Groot. Mr. Cobb.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a request for this council to vacate a 12-foot utility easement that is no longer in use by the city so that the property over which the utility easement resides can be used as part of the development. The utility easement was granted to the city in July of 1991. As I stated before, it's in no longer use. The original person who granted it to us was Mr. Thomas Becker. He is no longer with us, and the current owner of the property where the easement is Ms. Margaret Wharton. We checked with the utility providers. There are no claims from the utility companies to this easement. Therefore, it's recommended that the council conduct a public hearing and adopt ordinance number 1597.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Cobb. The applicant have anything for us?
My name is David Axel, 1757 West Broadway Street, Suite 1. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, M.I. Homes, and the underlying property owner, Margaret Wharton, and we concur with the staff recommendation and are available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. I will open that now. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to address council on ordinance number 1597? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing portion and move on to the pleasure of council.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Henkin.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance number 1597.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Councilman Henkin, anything?
No, sir.
Councilwoman?
No.
Deputy Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Good. Good. Councilman Britton? All righty. Hearing no comments, I will call the question. The motion on the table is to adopt ordinance number 1597. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to first reading of ordinances, we're up to item number 16, which is ordinance number 1598. Mr. Groot, could you read ordinance 1598 by title only, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. An ordinance of the City of Oviedo, Florida, annexing by voluntary petition certain real property approximately 10.180 acres in size and generally located approximately 100 feet north of Geneva Drive and on the east and west sides of Lee Avenue, located contiguous to the City of Oviedo, in accordance with the voluntary annexation provisions of Section 171.044 Florida statutes. Redefine the boundaries of the City of Oviedo to include said property, providing for findings, providing for conditions, directing the city clerk to record the ordinance with the clerk of the circuit court, the chief administrative office of Seminole County, and with the Department of State, providing for a legal description and map, providing for a savings provision, ratification of acts and acknowledgement of inclusion of lands within the city municipal boundaries, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, providing for non-codification, and the taking of administrative actions, and providing for an effective date. And that's the ordinance by title, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Groot. Mr. Cobb?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a request for City Council to approve a voluntary annexation of approximately 10.18 acres located just north of Geneva Drive and on the east and west sides of Lee Avenue. These properties are a subsequent annexation to properties that you recently annexed under ordinances 1554 and 1562. They will be combined with those earlier annexed properties for a single-family residential development known as Foster's Grove. Basically, there's a three-pronged test in the state statutes when it comes to annexing. The property must be contiguous with your corporate boundary. It must be reasonably compact, and the result of the annexation cannot result in the creation of an enclave. The annexation of these properties does meet all three criteria of the state statute. Therefore, it's recommended that the City Council schedule a public hearing for Monday, October 20th, 2014.
Thank you, Mr. Cobb. I'd like to entertain a motion from the council to schedule a public hearing on October 20th, 2014 for ordinance number 1598 at Oviedo City Hall in the Oviedo City Council Chambers, 400 Alexandria Boulevard, Oviedo, Florida, 32765 at approximately 6:30 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Councilman, anything? Deputy Mayor, I'm sorry. Councilwoman? Councilman Britton?
Good.
Councilman Henkin?
No, sir.
Mr. Cobb?
Yes, sir.
All of these properties are on our side of the JPA line, correct?
Yes, sir.
All righty. We are not encroaching anywhere near the JPA.
No, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Cobb. Any other questions? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor of the motion to schedule the public hearing for October 20th, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item number 17, it is ordinance number 1599. Mr. Groot, can you please read ordinance 1599 by title only?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. An ordinance of the City of Oviedo, Florida, amending ordinance number 896 of the City of Oviedo, Florida, said ordinance being the comprehensive land planning ordinance within the City of Oviedo, Florida, as previously amended. Providing for amendment to the City of Oviedo comprehensive plan, said amendment changing the future land use of approximately 8.29 acres from Seminole County low-density residential to City of Oviedo low-density residential, said properties being assigned tax parcel identification numbers 11-21-31-501-0B00-007A, a portion of 11-21-31-300-002A-0000, a portion of 11-21-31-502-0A00-0040, 11-21-31-501-0A00-009A, and a portion of 11-21-31-501-0B00-0030, and being described in this ordinance, providing for legislative findings and intent, providing for assignment of the land use designation for the property, providing for severability, providing for ratification of prior acts of the city, providing for conflicts, providing for codification and directions to the code codifier, and providing for an effective date. That's the ordinance by title, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Groot. At this point, you might as well read the whole thing in its entirety. Mr. Cobb.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a request for City Council to approve a future land use map amendment for the non-right-of-way properties that you just approved for annexation. It's approximately 8.29 acres, and this is to change the future land use designation of these properties from Seminole County low-density residential to City of Oviedo low-density residential. Basically, this comprehensive plan amendment the purpose is a change of jurisdiction. The maximum density actually will decrease through the change of future land use map future land use designation from a maximum of 4 in the county to a maximum of 3.5 dwelling units per acre in the city. The Development Review Committee considered this ordinance on September the 25th, 2014. They're at recommended adoption. Planning, Zoning, and Appeals Board considered this ordinance at its Tuesday, September 30th public meeting, and they're at recommended adoption as well. It's recommended that the City Council schedule a public hearing for Monday, October the 20th, 2014. One thing about this is a small-scale comprehensive plan amendment. Therefore, you'll conduct one public hearing. It will be sent to the Department of Economic Opportunity. If they choose not to review it, it will become effective 31 days later. So, just so you know.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Cobb. This time, I'd like to entertain a motion from the council to schedule a public hearing for ordinance number 1599 on October 20, 2014, here at Oviedo City Hall in the Oviedo City Council chambers at 400 Alexandria Boulevard, Oviedo, Florida, 32765 at approximately 6:30 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Deputy Mayor, anything? Councilwoman?
Nope.
Councilman Henkin? Good. Councilman Britton? Good. All righty, hearing none, I will call the question to schedule the public hearing. The motion on the table is to do so. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on, we're up to ordinance number 1600. Mr. Groot, can you read the ordinance in its entirety, please? Gotcha.
You don't want me to do that.
By title only is fine. Just want to make sure you're paying attention.
I'm paying attention.
You know, we had to read one in its entirety one time. And I remember poor Mr. Colbert, it was like 2.5 pages long.
That was bad.
So, anyway, go ahead.
That's brutal.
I was happy I didn't write that one.
An ordinance of the City of Oviedo, Florida, amending the official zoning map of the City of Oviedo, Florida. Said amendment changing the zoning district of approximately 9.707 acres located approximately 100 feet north of Geneva Drive and on the east and west side of Lee Avenue from Seminole County Agriculture and City of Oviedo Residential to the City of Oviedo R-1, providing for legislative findings and intent, implementing action, non-codification, severability, conflicts, and an effective date, and ratification, affirmation of prior actions. That's ordinance by title, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Groot. Mr. Cobb?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, this is a zoning map amendment to change the zoning district of approximately 9.707 acres from Seminole County Agricultural A1 and City of Oviedo R1A Residential to City Residential R1. The applicant intends to combine these properties with other properties that the City Council earlier designated with the R1 zoning district to develop it as a single-family residential development known as Foster's Grove. The proposed R1 zoning district is consistent with the city low-density residential future land use designation that you just scheduled a public hearing for. It also is compatible with the zoning districts around the surrounding zoning districts in the area. The Development Review Committee considered this ordinance at its September 25th, 2014 meeting and recommended adoption. The Planning, Zoning, and Appeals Board considered this zoning map amendment at its September 30th meeting and recommended adoption. Tonight, you are asked to schedule a public hearing for Monday, October the 20th, 2014.
Thank you, Mr. Cobb. At this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to schedule a public hearing on ordinance number 1600 for October 20th, 2014, here at Oviedo City Hall in the Oviedo City Council Chambers, 400 Alexandria Boulevard, Oviedo, Florida, 32765 at approximately 6:30 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and multiple seconds. Deputy Mayor, any questions? Councilwoman?
Good.
Councilman Henkin? Councilman Britton?
Good.
All righty. Hearing no questions, I will call the vote to schedule the public hearing for October 20th, 2014. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item 19, it is resolution number 2911-14. This time I will turn it over to Mr. Cobb or Mr. Groot. Who's handling this?
Actually, Mayor, Mr. Groot is going to take the lead on this one.
Mr. Groot, it is all yours.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of council, as you know, the Twin Rivers application for rezoning has been withdrawn. So as to this resolution that's been prepared and agendized, et cetera, there's no action that's needed. And in actuality, there should be nothing to discuss at this point. It would be really better not to discuss anything relative to the Twin Rivers application. That being said, I can either discuss an item now relative to this process that's discussed in this resolution, or I can wait till my report, whichever you prefer.
Mr. Groot, we're on the item now. Why don't you proceed with it?
Well, without going into the specifics of this particular property, there are occasions, such as this was, where a fundamental issue arises at the inception of a development application, and that is whether or not the use or something very fundamentally similar to the use is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. And state law says you can't approve a development that's not consistent with your plan. So that decision is fundamental. Now, there are other situations where you don't know whether comprehensive plan consistency has been attained until after a development has gone through all the steps and the setbacks and the buffers and the transportation impacts and the environmental impacts and all that. But there are other occasions where it's just a fundamental decision, and this was one of them. And we developed this process where you could handle the legal issue right up front, deal with it in a very economical way, and quite frankly, not only from the city's perspective, but from any developer's perspective too, because there's a lot of money spent in the other processes. So Mr. Cobb and I are convinced this is a good process in the right circumstance. So what we would offer to you is, if you think this process is one that could be helpful in the future, whether it's for this particular development or some other development, we would offer presenting to you an ordinance that adopts in the Land Development Code the option, and we would suggest it as the option. So the land use administrator could say, well, this is one of these situations like I just described. It should go through this economical process, or it's just your normal development scenario, and it goes through the regular, steps. It doesn't come to a head earlier. But that would be a decision that would be reviewable by the city council, by the way. So we could prepare an ordinance and bring it to you that would adopt this process generally, or the option to use this process generally, if you would like us to do that. And so, Brian, did you have anything to add?
No, I agree. I agree with Mr. Groot that when you have a situation like this where you're being asked to do something that is not in keeping with your comprehensive plan, then you should be able to have the opportunity to address that comprehensive plan issue first. All development must comply with your comprehensive plan. So addressing the comprehensive plan issue on the front end is very important. So I would agree with them.
And this would be reviewable by us? It would come
Yes,
to us
sir.
first
Yes, sir.
to see if we want to enter into that process, similar to what you were doing this evening?
We can do it that way. We could do it just like we had with this resolution, where we would bring it to you and ask you to schedule a public hearing.
Okay. What are the thoughts of council?
I'm for it.
Basically, you would bring that, like you were just saying, that for us, would be come forward, bring it to us, and ask if we want to go through this process, would be the, you'd present this, you think it's a candidate for this process, and if council's, then it should go through this process. And then even if it does, we can still review the results on the backside.
Well, the way it would work is, let's say an application was filed, and Brian, as the land use administrator, thought this was an appropriate process.
Mm-hmm.
He would come to you and say, I think this is an appropriate process, but these steps would be codified in the code. And would say, and he would say, this is what I think would be an appropriate process, and the property owner, quite frankly, could say, no, it's not, and tell you why, in their view, and then you could decide whether or not it was the right way to go or not. And
Okay, I got it now. I got it, yep.
You good? Yeah. Have it over here. Any questions?
Well, I think eventually I'll defer to Mr. Groot's and Mr. Cobb's opinion, but don't we always have to make that determination when a development comes to us?
yes, sir.
This is just a streamlined way of doing it?
You do, but it comes to you in different, and it could come to you as a fund. Let's see. Let's say there was a piece of property that was it was comp plan for commercial, and there was a zoning application for resident. I mean, not a zoning application. Somebody submitted a plan that was residential. Well, you can't do that, and so but you make the decision. Staff doesn't make the decision about comp plan consistency. You do. So that matter could come directly to you without going through all the development review steps and the other boards and then coming to you after tons and tons of staff work and, quite frankly, tons and tons of work on the development side. Right?
I think the difference, Mr. Britton, is that, yes, under a normal development application, we're going to go through the concurrency analysis, and we're going to determine whether or not there's sufficient capacity to serve the proposed development. That's part of going through the development review process. That's the comprehensive plan component of development review. What this process would be utilized for are those questions where, and an example might be where we have a regulation in our comprehensive plan that we have a setback from water bodies, and that no building can be within 50 feet of a lake. Well, you can't get a variance to that. And so there was a request that something be placed within that, then we could go in and say, okay, Mr. Groot, would you give us an opinion on this? He would do just like he did before, give us an opinion, and then we would bring it to you, and you could either concur with that opinion, or you could say, no, we don't agree with Mr. Groot's opinion. This, in our opinion, complies with the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
That's a better example.
It kind of sounds like you're recommending this process on a case-by-case basis rather than us making it a standard procedure.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be the normal procedure. It would be one. But what Mr. Groot is saying, let's go ahead and put it in your comprehensive plan so that it becomes a tool available to you. I mean, put it in your land development code. I'm sorry. Put it in the land development code so that it becomes a tool that you can utilize when these issues, these extraordinary comprehensive plan issues arise.
Okay, thanks.
You good?
Yeah, I mean, well, certainly will streamline everything. I think Lonnie pointed out a great point that on the developer side and our side all the time, if it comes and something doesn't meet the comprehensive plan, you've saved all this work. So I think it's a good, worthy thing to do.
All right. Looks like you have 5-0 consensus to bring that forward, Mr. Groot. Mr. Groot, the status of this is that it's withdrawn, you said?
Yes, sir. It's withdrawn.
Coming back, anything happening? Are we still locked down, so to speak? Council from speaking about it?
Yeah, I would recommend, I'm glad you asked that question. I would highly recommend that you continue your vigilance in not discussing the development proposal as it has been withdrawn or as it may come in the future or anything about it, because all you could do is potentially eliminate your own right to vote, and you don't want to do that.
All righty, Mr. Groot, thank you for the clarification. Is there anything else, Mr. Groot? Mr. Cobb?
No, sir, thank you.
Anything from the council? No. All righty, moving on, discussion items, we have none. Mr. Cobb, you're up.
I have no report tonight, Mayor.
Yeah, well, that's very good. Mr. Groot?
No, sir, thank you, though.
All righty, Councilman Henkin.
No, sir.
Councilwoman?
None?
Look at you. Councilman Britton?
Gee whiz, I got a few things.
Oh, jeez.
Killing it.
I'll be quick. I just have a presentation from Seminole State that I've asked Linda to pass on to you. They gave a presentation on a new health and wellness center that they're going to develop at their Lake Mary campus, and believe it or not, I think they're looking at Care Here as one of the providers there, so there may be some synergy for us, but Linda will send that out to you. That came out of the Calno meeting. And I will be at the League of Cities on Friday for the Transportation Advocacy Committee and watching movies Friday night. And then I'll be at at the Helping Hands event on Saturday night. So a lot of events coming up. That's
Terrific.
it.
Anything else? Yeah. Myself, just real quick, we've had the ribbon cutting for Ashton Woods. Townhomes are now open over on Oviedo on the Park, and from what I've been told, they are selling very well. So we're happy to see that they got off to a great start. And we do have a lot of events coming up this week, starting with Rotary Movie Night on Friday, Helpful Hands on Saturday. So we will be keeping busy. Deputy Mayor.
And it's National Night Out tomorrow night,
Oh, forgot about that. Thank you.
so we all participating in that also. That's it.
Great. Is there anything else from the council?
Chief Judd, now, I don't think I'm going to be able to ride with you, but can you send out the areas that are going to have events tomorrow? Okay, thanks.
I have to ask, do we have jerk hot dogs or not?
That sign is up and running, so I'm going to guess we do.
Excellent. All righty.
Yeah.
Councilwoman will definitely
I'm
be
coming
there.
You're no longer able to participate.
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to participate. Well, what you don't know won't hurt you. But anyway. All righty, future meeting dates. We have Monday, October 20th, Monday, November 3rd, Monday, November 17th, and Monday, December 1st. Those are all regular sessions, 6:30 p.m. here in the council chambers. Mr. Cobb, we have no work sessions or anything up here that I'm missing?
No, sir.
All righty. With that being said, is there any other business before us? Staff? Council? Meeting adjourned.